Hello, everybody, and welcome to day 25 in this quest for a 2000 rating on chess.com. So let's find an opponent and begin. All right, so we have the black pieces, and they begin with c4, the English opening. All right, let's see here. Let's see. Go ahead and do that. And so it's a King's Indian defense. All right, so now I think I will try a Grunfeld. See if I go here. All right, and we'll just see what they do next. Will they capture? Will they ignore that? Let's find out. Okay, so, of course I want to bring my bishop up here. So, do I go ahead and do that now? Let's see, why not? All right, and as I said before, I'm still learning this new opening repertoire, so that'll probably go on for a few months longer until I start ironing out the wrinkles and learning these new openings. I used to always play the King's Indian defense as black, for quite a few years. Against d4, but then if they played e4, I used to play the Sicilian. So now I'm trying something a little different. All right, I guess we'll go ahead and castle here. We could also just, let's see, develop this pawn. We'll go ahead and castle. And then we'll put this pawn up here on c6. Okay, we'll go ahead and do that. All right, now we'll capture, and then they'll have to recapture, so they kind of waste a move doing that. Now, let's see. Well, it would be nice to be able to bring this bishop out. Should I go ahead, bring it out that way? I don't know if I want to press forward. Okay, they could push this forward. So we'll go ahead and do that. And just see what they do next. All right, so what are we looking at here? They'll probably castle on the king side, I would assume, unless, I don't think they're going to castle on the queen side. Okay, so they grab space over here. Should we go ahead and do the same? Probably. So we'll go ahead and do that. Try and keep things even. Now we could jump a knight up here and then here to try and, let's see, that kind of solved a problem. Well, we'll just go ahead and do that. Jump our knight up here and then jump it in to b4. All right. the main issue is our bishop is kind of blocked in. But I don't know, maybe this is a decent square up here for the knight on b4 on the queen side. Now, they may try and just push this pawn up here to e4 and then have two strong central pawns, even possibly push here and chase my knight. Well, if they do that, then they'll have a backwards pawn. And also, maybe they won't want to push this pawn forward because right now they're protecting their d pawn, and that pawn on e3 really backs that d pawn up and keeps it pretty solid. So my main problem is this bishop, this bad bishop that's locked in behind the pawns that are on the same colored squares here. So, if they don't capture me here, I don't know, do I jump the knight up here, push this pawn, then put my bishop here? That's a possibility. All right, and so also they're taking a lot of time thinking, which usually that is what I have issues with, taking too much time. And I think the last game in this series I ended up running out of time, and the position was I think difficult anyway. All right, back to this game. What do they have? What is an option here? Well, they have the same issue with this bishop that's blocked in. Although they could push their pawn here forward. Let's see. They could push their... they could push their pawn here, but it also depends what they want to do with their queen. Do they bring their queen up here and create a battery with the bishop, and then try and push their pawns through? They could just develop their rook here to e1, unless they want to put their queen on c2 to try and cover this open or half open file. Move the bishop, bring the rook over to c1, put their other rook maybe on d1, and line up on my queen. Let's see here. Well, no, if they bring their queen up to c2, my knight can jump up here and chase that queen anyway. So what will they do? All right. So now, what should I be doing in this position? Well, looks like this bishop is the main issue. I could just develop my rook to e8 and then maybe in the future push forward, but I don't know if I want to move my e-pawn with the bishop lined up on my king there. They could move this f knight, move their f3 knight, and then push their f pawn forward, which is a possibility. Okay, finally they develop this bishop. So where will that bishop try and go? Well, I guess they would try to knock out my knight. Okay, I see what they might be planning. So if I go here, they jump back and attack. All right. So do we jump forward with that knight? Let's see. Let's see. All right. Well, might as well follow through with the plan. So we'll just go ahead and do that. Jump that knight there. Maybe push this B pawn up. Put her. Okay, so they go ahead and decide to do that. All right. Well, I guess we're doing that. Maybe that'll bring their bishop back. Or if the rook captures, I doubt, maybe he'll just bring his bishop back. That's probably, okay, so now that leaves the rook free to move over here. So now I really have to decide, well, now do I push this? Could push that pawn, but then it's going to leave this one backwards. All right, all right. To push forward or not? Probably need to go here, but then this pawn is going to become a target, I think. So do we jump the other knight in here and then bring it up here? We'll have to back it up with the queen. Okay, I guess we could bring our queen up here and attack this unprotected pawn. So maybe that would be best. Now, we also have to look out, what if this knight moves forward? Will that do anything? Okay. Well, let's go there. Bring our queen up. Then maybe we can jump our knight up here and threaten to swing into here. You know, at worst, they capture our knight. All right, so at least we're attacking that pawn. What will they do? Just maybe bring their queen up and we trade off queens? That's a possibility as well. But let's see, what are they? 1609 rated. And we've fallen back down to 1588 after reaching 1600 and then having 2 draws, I think, with lower rated players, and then a loss on time in the last game. So I got to try and break out of this slump. All right, so what should we do? I mean, do we want to bring this knight up here? Attack their bishop? Okay. So they line up here to protect that. Now, do we jump forward with our knight? Well, at least they got off of the line of our bishop aimed down through there. Okay. So now Should we jump our knight into the game here, then jump here? If the queen would line up there. All right, should we push this knight? That is the question. Should we just push this pawn? All right, well, let's jump our knight in here. See what they decide to do. You know, I don't know, is this premature by doing that? We have to figure out what to do with this problemed bishop still as well. It's kind of locked in. All right. And I guess we'll see if they give up. That they probably don't want to give up their good bishop here, you know, for this knight. All right. So what now? We jump in there. What if I bring that knight up here and he brings his queen in here? Then my queen is kind of trapped there. So I don't know if this is the greatest spot for this queen. Okay. They decide to do that. Interesting, interesting. Okay, well, that could be an issue. And now they're threatening to jump from here back to here, attacking my queen and this pawn at the same time. Oof. Not looking too great. Should I push forward here with this pawn? Yeah, and what about just capturing this knight and knocking that knight out of there? And maybe I'll go ahead and do that. I don't really want to give up my bishop pair, but and then this weakness here, this could be, you know, this could cause problems. All right. All right, well, we're going to go ahead and do that. Maybe this will cause me some issues, but at least we double their pawns up. Now we can go ahead, attack their bishop. Okay, now why did they decide to do that? Now we could attack their bishop and this pawn at the same time. So let's go ahead and do that. So now we're attacking their bishop and the pawn. So they could just capture our knight, but if they do that, we'll just capture with the pawn, and then we're still attacking their bishop. Okay, now is there any traps here? If they protect the pawn and I go after the bishop, no, I can retreat. So where will they move their bishop? Do they just attack? Will they capture with their bishop? All right, well, I don't know. I think that move gives me some advantage. So I'm going after their pawn and their bishop at the same time. What can they do? Now this bishop pair could be a problem, but, usually you don't want to give up your bishop pair, which I've done here, but at least it doubled their pawns. So now, I'm able to fork the pawn and the bishop with my queen. Okay, so they do that. I'm going to snatch up this pawn. So I guess we'll go ahead and do that. So we'll grab the pawn. Okay, so they decide to push forward here. Now, what should we do next? What should we do next? Are there any weaknesses that we can go after? Okay. Well, do we go here, line up on their queen? Do we stay on this line, attack their bishop? The pawn captures, the queen captures. All right, I say we line up on their king. That looks like a pretty decent move here. So we'll line up on their king. Now we do have to watch out, since they have that we have to watch out that they have that bishop pair, and especially this dark squared bishop. If that gets maneuvered around and lines up here, that could be a problem. If it lines up on these weak squares around the king. And we want to, I'm trying to decide whether I should just push immediately here with this pawn. Okay, so immediately they try and take advantage. Oh, and they resign because now I can just pick that off. I don't know if you saw that. They made a blunder. Now I can pick off this pawn with check, and then pick up their bishop as well. So they just resigned after that mistake. All right. Oh, I got a 3-day play streak. Let me get rid of that. All right. So, well, that ended faster than I expected. So we'll go ahead and do the game review and then an analysis. And I don't know, this makes me wonder. So this was a 1600 rated player, and then I play some lower rated ones that are like 13, 1400, and they seem to play stronger. So it kind of makes you wonder if people are using computer assistants or not. Hopefully not. But I'm just curious if any of you have issues out there when you're playing online. Do you get the feeling that sometimes people are using computer assistants? I'd be interesting if you leave comments on that because I'm kind of curious. Also, if you haven't liked and subscribed, please go ahead and support the channel and do that now. All right, let's jump into this game review. Okay. So we played at 80.2% accuracy. They played at 74.1. Nothing brilliant, no great moves. And now, let's see, inaccuracies. My opponent had 3 inaccuracies. I had 4, so it'll be interesting to see what those are. 1 mistake by my opponent, I had 2. 2 misses by my opponent, and I had 1. And then finally they blundered, there at the end. All right, so the game was even. White was slightly ahead pretty much the whole time, about even or slightly ahead until this blunder at the end. All right, let's start the review here. So the computer just blasts through the moves like always. This was the Grunfeld defense, 3 knights variation. So I'll have to go back and look at the opening repertoire I'm using. I don't know how you guys keep track of your openings. I kind of like to write down each game that I play. I'll write down on an index card that opening, the opening moves, and if it's a new move, then I'll make another index card. And you can do it on computers now, on your phone, but I kind of like to handwrite the moves on an index card, old school, because it kind of helps me remember more the act of writing and making the index cards. And it seems to help, although I'm just starting out in these openings, so I have a long way to go. All right, so continuing on here, it doesn't like this move. So it says that is a mistake. I don't know, I guess we'll find out why here in a little bit. I guess putting the knight on the rim is dim. So let's continue on. We'll take more of a look at these moves in the analysis. And then it did not like giving up the bishop pair, taking that knight in the center there. But I don't know. I thought that knight was going to give me problems. And I don't know. Maybe the computer can figure out things a lot better than the average person, of course. And I'm sure it gave me a mistake for that move because I'm giving up the bishop pair. And even worse, I'm giving up a bishop that protects my king. So after that exchange, I'm left with these weak squares around my king. But I don't know. I just wanted to get rid of that strong knight. I saw an interesting video where the video talked about Bobby Fischer having a rule that anytime somebody posted a piece on your side of the board, that he tried to get rid of it as quick as he could. You either chase that piece back or exchange it off. So anyway, we'll take a look at it here after we go through the rest of these moves. So this was a mistake. It did not like that. What would have been better there? I guess we'll find out. It says rook to c1. So just lining up on the bishop, protecting the bishop, and then I would go ahead and capture this. All right, so moving on. And then this was their blunder here. So instead, they should have played queen to e2, which, yeah, queen to e2 would be a pretty solid move because it protects this pawn. And then eventually the bishop could move up here, but it creates a battery that would prevent me from pushing this pawn forward, which I didn't know if I wanted to do that anyway. I was probably going to push this pawn up. Oh, but then that would even stop me from bringing my bishop out over here. So yeah, that would be a good move, queen to e2, and then white would be ahead by half a pawn's worth of, the equivalent of half a pawn's worth of material. All right, in the summary, it said you had a pretty competitive game there. The opening was balanced. You were a cut above your opponent in the middle game. And so I played at a 1750 level versus their 1600 level. And then opening accuracy was 84.5 for them. And I had 82.4. Let's see. Middle game. Oh, they had 58.5. And then I had 77.1. All right. Well, let's take a look at this in the analysis. I think we looked at everything else here. Okay. So back to the opening. Let's take a look. So C4. So this is the English opening. And here you bring out C4, and then you can jump your knight in behind the pawn instead of putting the knight in front of the C pawn and blocking it. In the English opening, you bring this C pawn out, jump your knight in behind the pawn, and then it helps you put a kind of a lockdown on D5 here. Moving on, we transposed into a different opening. For you beginners out there, if you're not familiar with transposition, that's basically when you start with one opening and through a series of moves, the game or the opening transposes into a different opening. And that can be used as a weapon, I guess. If you're familiar with different lines of a specific opening, you may be able to start one way and then transpose into a line that's better in a different opening, and it could throw your opponent off. But that's a little more, that can be a little more advanced stuff there to learn transpositions. And once again, if you're a beginner, I would recommend not spending all your time on openings, unless you really love openings and it's very fun to you, then by all means, you want to have fun when you're playing chess because it will encourage you to play more chess and to improve, and hopefully not get frustrated and take a break from playing because you're not doing well. All right, so they play D4. So this is a common theme where if you bring up one of your pawns to put another one beside it, because then white here's controlling a lot of central squares by doing that. And the knight is here to prevent this E4 pawn push, to just, we don't want white just taking control of the entire center. So now we play G6 to fianchetto the bishop, get ready to castle our king quickly, and from here the bishop will have a nice diagonal down through the center of the board, and that could be a danger aiming down towards the rook, potentially if the position opened up. But as you see, we'll go from the King's Indian defense and transpose into the Grunfeld opening. So they continue with the common move in the King's Indian, knight to c3, and then this, d5. So this is the Grunfeld defense. Now I used to play the King's Indian defense, which is a good solid chess opening for black. It can, with the King's Indian, you can get a little bit cramped. Your position can become cramped, and that was one of the reasons. And I'd been playing the King's Indian defense for so long that I wanted to switch up to something different and play this Grunfeld defense, because immediately you try and take a share of the center. Now, they could recapture. So a common variation is, this is the third best move according to the computer, is to take your less valuable C pawn and capture this D5 pawn. And then, of course, I would recapture with the knight. And then I have the option, if they don't capture, then I could capture their knight, and then they would capture with the B pawn possibly and leave them with the isolated A pawn. Or they could ignore this, and they don't have to capture here. Let's see. But one possibility is they capture, I capture with the knight. They could play E4 and then have a strong pawn center, especially after I capture their knight and this B pawn comes up here to C3. They would have a strong pawn formation in the center. All right, moving on. Knight to F3, developing another piece, helping to control the center, having an eye on this E5 square. So now I just continue my development, get the bishop fianchettoed, get ready to castle. Here the computer is saying it would be best to just go ahead and capture that pawn now. So maybe we go back and look here. So we're still in a book move after bishop to G7, and then once they play H3, I guess that went out of the book moves. But it's saying C takes D5 is best. But with H3, the game's about even. So I castle, which is best. Game is still even. And they play E3, the best move. So now it's saying I should play E6. All right, so instead I played C6, I believe, which is the third best move, but E6 or even C5. So, that's quite interesting. C5 is an option here. All right. Well, if they capture, if I would play C5 with my pawn, and then they would capture that pawn, then I should capture their pawn, and then we have a queen trade. I don't know, that's an interesting variation. I won't dive off into that variation now, but that's something that you could take a look at on your own. Normally I wouldn't consider that C5 move, but the computer says it's equal. It looks like you're kind of giving up a pawn there, but there must be some way to get it back and get back in the game. All right, well, let's continue on here. We played C6, which is still a good move, but now the game is slightly in white's favor. And so now they respond with bishop to D3, and we're back in book moves here. So this is a book move, and if we go back, let's see if there's anything better. Bishop to E2 is the most recommended. A4 is possible, but looks like bishop to E2 is what the computer likes best. All right, well, bishop to D3, and now that they've moved this bishop, now we waited to capture this pawn until they move their bishop, because now after we capture, which is excellent, though the computer prefers, computer prefers this interesting move of bringing the bishop to E6. So something else I'll have to take a look at. So let's go back here. Well, now it's saying, well, okay, I see all three of these moves look like they're about equal. So bishop to e6. Um, what if they bring their knight here? You know, then they're threatening to just capture my bishop. So I don't know if I like that. You know, with bishop to e6, they could jump in here, threaten to capture. I mean, would I let them capture and then capture with the f pawn towards the center to fortify this central position, and then open the rook up? So that's a possibility. I won't play it out here because we'll end up veering off into some crazy lines. I'll wait to look at these mistakes and misses here, these highlighted moves, before I play them out on the board. And you can let me know if you prefer me to play more positions out on the board, you know, of what could have happened in the game, unless you find that that's too much. All right, so we capture because now they have to spend an extra tempo after they've already moved that bishop to capture this pawn. So they capture, and now we can develop. Let's see here. The computer is saying that we should play c5 here. All right, c5. You know, why wouldn't they just capture that? I mean, I guess it kind of opens up this diagonal for my bishop, but you know, that's something maybe I'll take a look at in the future, because if we push this c5 pawn, it looks like they can just snatch it up for free. We could exchange queens if they do that. And then how do we get that pawn back? I guess we could just go after it with our knight. And then if they protect it, we could push this a pawn up and start attacking. But anyway, I'm not going to get into that. Let's continue on here. So e6 is good, but the computer likes b5. And you know, I thought about it, the b5 pawn push, but I didn't want to be left with this backward c pawn on a half-open file, and it could become a target later in the game. But I don't know, the computer says I should just push that c pawn anyway. So, I mean, I guess that's an option as well. So if we go back, e6 is still a good move. But now, after that move, it's plus 0.68 in white's favor. So let's continue here. They play a4, which is an inaccuracy. So what should they have played? It looks like just castling would have been better. Castling or queen to c2, queen to e2. But this pawn push is now an inaccuracy. And we play a5, but the computer says that that is an inaccuracy, that c5 now would have been better. Okay, so I guess we can go ahead and take a look at this c5 move and see what it's about. So here, instead of pushing the pawn, what happens if we play c5? Okay, so the computer recommends either b3 or castling or queen to e2. If they capture, so we can take a look at that. If they capture, well then it looks like we should trade queens. They can capture with the king or the knight. So if they capture with the king, then it recommends just developing our knight here. All right. And it doesn't want us to check right away with our rook, which, I mean, I guess they could just block that. But, you know, if they leave the knight, capture with the king and leave the knight up here, well, then they might have a threat of jumping here and then threatening to jump in here and attack this rook. So let's take a look here. So let's say they capture this way. Well, now the recommended move is knight at b to d7. Okay, to immediately go after our pawn here. Okay, so now what if, well, the computer's saying knight to d4 now would be the best move. So knight to d4. Now, what if they just protect that pawn? Oh, well then we could cause problems with our bishop here. If they try and move this pawn up, so we'll take a look at it. See if they do this, well, now the game jumps to almost a pawn's worth of material in black's favor, because after knight to d5 here, we have this bishop pinning the knight to the rook. So let's see if they capture, which it shows that's best, and then we capture their knight, we're attacking the rook, and the rook has to move. Well, why would the rook move there? Why wouldn't the rook protect that pawn? So it says rook to a3 is best, but oh, okay, you can't protect the pawn because you have to attack the bishop to give you time to move this bishop out of the way. All right, because rook to b1, then you'd be behind by 2 pawns worth of material. All right, anyway, you have to move the rook up here to attack to give you time to do something with this bishop. You know, if you protect the pawn with rook to b1, then you just capture here. All right, let's get back to the game. So we play a5, which is an inaccuracy, and now, you know, it's almost +1 in white's favor. So moving on, we have castling, which is good, but queen to e2 would have been better, creating a battery with the queen and bishop. And now we have this knight move, a mistake, +1.44 in white's favor. So once again, it wants that c5 pawn push. So if we go back, c5, the number 1 move. So we go ahead and play c5. Their best response is to capture. And then it looks like best is to just go ahead, trade queens off. Rook recaptures. And now knight at b to d7, going after this pawn. So knight at b to d7. And then it looks like e4, just pushing forward. Well, now it's saying that's an inaccuracy and it wants the f pawn. So let's go back. Yeah, the computer's unsure, but at least with, I don't know, here, if you develop another piece, if you move this knight, well, then you're unleashing the bishop down this diagonal. You know, you could possibly exchange it and wreck his pawns here, and they would become long-term targets. Anyway, Let's get back to the game. And where were we? After a4, a5, they castle. We move our knight up here, and the best move now, it looks like, is just to play e4 with the pawns taking control of the center. So now, they have a miss here. e4 was better by almost a pawn's worth better of material here. Pawn's worth of material better. Bishop to d2, just developing a piece here. All right. So now what? Bishop to d2. I mean, I guess we could take a look at e4. So e4 would have been better. So we got e4. Then it looks like h6, maybe to give this knight somewhere to retreat, possibly. Knight to b4, just immediately jumping up there is the second best move. But we'll take a look at that and just play out a few of the best moves. Now it's saying e5 to just go ahead and chase the knight away. So e5. And now, knight to d5 is the second best move, that it wants knight to d7. So that's pretty interesting. Knight to d7 is the best move here. And now we have, let's see, queen to e2, and now b6. And the computer was unsure of that. It said that bishop to e3, developing the bishop, might have been better. But after b6, we have knight to e4 or rook to d1. So what would knight to e4 do? That'd be a good move. Jump that knight up here, and then you could jump it into this outpost up here, or maybe at some point you could try and jump it in here, but probably right now that's covered by everything. So jump the knight up here and then maybe jump over here would be an idea. And then also by jumping to e4 with the knight, it might keep an eye on this square, the c5 square, which the computer kept saying that pushing this pawn to c5 would be interesting to do. Okay, back to the game once again before I veer off too far. So bishop to d2, and that's a miss. So now, finally, we jump this knight up here to b4, and the computer says that's a miss. That once again, it really prefers this c5 pawn push, which, I don't know, that seems to be the common theme in this game, is to push that c5 pawn. I was thinking, well, if I go there, they could capture first and then capture this. But it would be hard to defend that. This knight could drop back and attack it immediately. All right, so now we have knight to b4, which was a miss, and knight to a2, which is a miss. So both of us are returning the favor here, one miss after another. So e4 would have been much better, by almost a pawn's worth of material. So let's look at that. So e4, just taking control of the center, and then most recommended is b6. So this kind of looks like what we played before. Then the same thing, e5, knight to d7, and now it's saying rook to e1 here. All right. Well, back to the game. So knight to a2, adding pressure with the bishop. And the knight here, it looks like best is to capture, which is what happened in the game, and now the game is about even. So it looks like the game is even after the rook captures. But I guess they didn't want to put that rook in this awkward position, so they just dropped their bishop back, which that's the second best move, and it's about the same. So they drop back. The game is still about even, and that was still an excellent move. And so here it looks like b6 is the most recommended move, or knight to e4, attacking their bishop here. And I don't know, I thought about jumping here to e4, but then I was thinking, well, they could just drop their bishop back. I was thinking if they drop back to e1, well, then I could have a threat of moving here and attacking this rook that would be trapped back there. So they would probably have to drop back to here, and then their rook would be a little blocked in. So knight to e4 is better, but after queen to b6, that was an inaccuracy. Once again, it wanted me to push this b pawn and get this bishop out to a6 here. Okay, so queen to b6 was played. We'll go back. So they wanted b6, and then rook to c1, though, would target this isolated pawn, and then the bishop would just move here and protect. Well, not an isolated pawn, but the rook would move here, attacking on the half-open file, but the bishop could then move here and just line up on the king side and protect that pawn at the same time. All right, so after queen to b6, well, now we have, how does my opponent respond? Looks like queen to c2 would be a good move. Rook to e1 or bishop to c4. So anyway, they play this, rook to b1, which is still a good move. I guess they wanted to get off of the line of, get off of this diagonal, but the main point of this move is just to protect the pawn here that the queen is attacking. So now knight to d5 is an inaccuracy. Queen to c7 would have been better, to just drop that queen back and get out of the way of this b pawn, which needs to be pushed forward. Okay, but here I wanted to get this knight up to b4 on this outpost and attack the bishop. So now they drop back, they move forward, and I was thinking, well, now they have a threat of dropping back here to c4 and attacking my queen and also attacking this pawn. But the computer says that knight to e5 is an inaccuracy, that it would have been better just to bring this bishop back out. All right, so I guess we could take a look at that. Bishop to c4, or e4, just attacking and bringing the other pawn forward. But bishop to c4, what would that do? Bishop to c4, now knight to b4 would be the best move. Knight to b4, and then it recommends e4. All right, well, moving on. Let's go back to the game. Knight to e5. And here's where I make the decision to trade this off. And let's see what the computer thinks about that one. It does not like that. It says that that is a mistake, that once again the c5 pawn push would have been better. All right, well, let's take a look at it. So the c5 pawn push, although now that's saying that that is not the best move, that queen to c1 would have been better. All right. Because the knight's probably going to move here and attack anyway. Attack the queen. But, I mean, I guess we could take a look at this c5 move. If that is played, well then, knight to c4. Now this is under attack by the bishop and the knight. The queen is under attack. So it looks like queen to c6. What is that move all about? I like queen to c7. Oh, either way, the queen could be attacked. No, queen to c7 would help cover this square. Because now, what about a capture here? Oh, I guess, well, all right. Now it's showing d takes c5 or knight takes a5. So let's take a look at that. Capture. Now the queen would go to c7 and threaten to just capture with the rook. And if the bishop captures, the queen would recapture. So now we have rook to c1. And, well, now the rook would just go ahead and capture here. Rook captures. Yeah, now we're getting crazy into all these lines. So that's as far as I go before I dig too deep once again. All right, so back to the game. I trade off my bishop, or get rid of my bishop pair, knocking out this strong knight and doubling his pawns. I don't know. The computer doesn't like it, but in the game I figured, well, it doubles his pawns up, gets rid of that strong knight, although it did cause weaknesses here. And so now we have knight to b4 attacking the bishop, and it looks like queen to c7 dropping back would have been better because then we could, drop back out of the way of the b pawn, push it forward, and get this bishop in the game, which was doing nothing. All right, so bishop to c4 is played, which is the best move. And now the queen just jumps up here, and this is an excellent move, but best would have been just developing the rook and lining up on the queen. All right. Well, okay, let's take a look at that because I have some questions about that. So it says best would be, well, now it's saying queen to c5 is best. All right, so queen to c5 is excellent, but here it's saying rook to d8 is better. So if we go back, rook to d8, they're even. Okay, those two moves are even. Let's take a look at this. Rook to d8. Okay, and now e4. Just pushing this forward, maybe threatening to centralize this other bishop here, or put it closer to the center after the queen is moved out of the way. Okay, anyway, back to the game moves, and we'll try and finish this out. So bishop to c4. The queen moves up, attacking the bishop and the pawn at the same time. So now we have b3, a mistake. So better would have been, let's see, rook to c1. Just to line up on that queen, protect the bishop. And now we would have queen takes e5, which is best. And then here it looks like queen to f3. All right, queen to f3 is best. So this queen to f3 move is trying to get the queen out here where it can possibly jump into these dark squares and use the bishop. So this is dangerous because the bishop wants to move here to c3, attack the queen, and try and get control of this open square here, or these dark squares, and then jump the queen up here and threaten a mate. So it looks like queen to f5 is best to just attack that queen, and then either move the queen to g3 to stay close to the king side, or jump back to e2. All right. Well, let's take a look at what happened in the game. After b3, we played, let's see, queen takes e5. And then once again, instead of capturing that pawn, it says that b5 would have been better. So we could take a quick look at that. b5, attacking the bishop. And then instead of capturing with the pawn, it appears that just ignoring that and retreating the bishop back to e2 would be best. Second and third moves are either to capture or to just go ahead and capture, but it likes the bishop retreat the best. Okay, and now we're getting down to the final stretch here. So after queen takes e5 here, we have f4 attacking the queen. That's an inaccuracy. Developing the queen to f3 would have been better. And so now we have queen to c5, which lines up on the king here. And then this is where they had the blunder. So they go ahead and move their bishop, which would allow me to capture this pawn on e3 with check. And then they'd have to move their king, and I would be able to pick up this bishop for free here. And that would be a winning advantage. So here's what the computer says may have happened in this position. But my opponent resigned here. So what may have happened after this is capture with check. The king moves. The queen captures here. And then the best move is to just bring, for white to bring his queen up here. Try to, I guess, get into my position a little bit. But looks like now best would be, and this is interesting, b4, or sorry, b5, pawn captures, and then bishop captures. So the computer is recommending that. And then from here it looks like just bishop to b7. Just a line up down here on the king side. So bishop to b7. And if we look at the material, black is ahead by a pawn and a bishop, and that should be winning. Or sorry, black is ahead by a pawn and this knight here. So this bishop could reposition here to this strong d5 outpost right in the center, and have threats maybe with the queen and the bishop on this g2 pawn. All right, but let's go back here and see what should have been played by our opponent, and then we'll just look at a few moves before we wrap up this video. All right, so instead of that move, best would have been, it looks like queen to f3. And now and after this, the game is even. So f5 is recommended. So, I don't know, that's an interesting move. Or knight to d5. So, just centralizing the knight back here to d5. But, I don't know, f5 stops this other pawn from pushing forward, I guess. Well, I guess it could do that, because if you capture, well, then you're going to have this isolated pawn here. And I don't know if I like that, because it removes some of your cover for your king. So I would probably prefer this, although, this pawn, it's inviting this pawn to just chase you away. Now the computer's saying this is best. And then rook at f to c1, lining up on the queen. And then it recommends, not moving. Well, it's a tie between moving the queen here to b6 and just playing rook to d8. So let's say we play rook to d8. Oh, and now it's saying queen to a7 would have been better. So, I don't know, that's kind of interesting. But after this, it's saying king to h2 to get off the line of the queen. And then queen to e7, just moving back here. And then we have e4, kicking that knight away. The knight jumping back up to b4. And then bishop to e3 on this diagonal. Then once again, the c5 move, which, this would help fortify that knight in case, white decides to capture it eventually. And now e5, just putting kind of a lockdown on these pawns here, gaining more space in the center. And then rook to b8. So this is saying the game is pretty even. Queen to g3 to try and move over, possibly get some control over these dark squares. And then knight to c6 here, so that's interesting. I don't know if I like knight to c6 though. So if we have knight to c6, well then it looks like f5 is the recommended move. Which, I guess that would start breaking apart some of the cover here. But there was something I didn't like about that. What if this bishop moves in and attacks? Well, now it's saying it would have been better to go here. Anyway, you get the picture. But what I didn't like is if the bishop moves out and attacks, moves here, attacks this knight. Well, now you have a rook and a bishop lining up on this pawn, and you can't push forward because this pawn is protecting the knight. So maybe I looked at that wrong. Yeah, knight to d5 I would like better, I think. So knight to d5. Okay. Anyway, you get the picture. We've gone on quite a bit and looked at different lines in this. So, back at the ending here. They attack the queen, we move over, lining up on the king, and they blunder. So, what did we say? Queen to f3 would have been better. So, queen to f3. And, the game would have gone on for quite a bit after that. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to end it there for today. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Feel free to leave comments or suggestions or even requests if there's some topic you would like to see in future videos. Thank you all for watching and have a super chess day.